Hi, I'm Dave Atkinson, and welcome to Life on the Straight. For this great adventure series, I'll be reading from my 3-volume book, The Yonder Years. I chose not to publish it, but there are links on my channel that will take you to a cloud drive where you can freely download the PDF files. This video will be providing a little more content than what is in the book. We've moved past the short foreword and introduction chapters and through the first 2 sections, planning and preparation, and 2 gypsies. We now will begin the next section titled Stuck in a Holding Pattern. If you've been following along, we need to stay in roughly the Pacific Northwest region of the country until at least November, when one of our problem tenants is due to vacate their spaces in a little business park that we own in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Before we head off to more distant parts of the country, we will first have to find a replacement tenant. That's okay, because even though Amy and I were born and raised around Seattle, there is much of the Pacific Northwest that we had yet to experience. Thank you for following Life on the Straight. If you enjoy this content, please subscribe to this channel, which is free, and like and share as well. And now, the Yonder Years. It was so nice not having to worry about the Invisibrake system. My attention could shift to getting the feel for G2 and testing out her various systems. We reserved a week at Boise Riverside RV Park so we could spend some time checking out a city that we had never really been to before. Well, technically that wasn't the case for me. Back in my early 20s, I used to go skiing over the Christmas holiday back to Utah, Wyoming, and Idaho. And one year we stopped at Bogus Basin Ski Resort, which is nestled in the mountains directly north of Boise. After we got her all set up in our designated campsite, the problems began. It turns out that the water supply lines leading to the washing machine were reversed. Hot went to cold, and cold went to hot. Another issue was that our city water pressure was barely a trickle coming out of our faucets. We ended up having to fill our fresh water tank little by little and then rotate the valve from city water to tank water, using the water pump to provide enough pressure for a normal flow. G2 had 2 outstanding issues that Camping World knew about before we took possession. The first was the city water and tank water selection valve. The plastic piece at the end of the valve that you grabbed and turned had broken off, meaning that I had to use a pair of pliers to turn it one way or the other. This part was out of stock. The second issue was the rolling table that acted as our dinette table and workspace table. There was a large scratch that would not buff out, so a replacement order was sent off to Winnebago. I don't know how their business model is put together, but apparently there is minimal cooperation between Camping World stores. We were told that the Meridian store had to really jump through hoops to fix the Invisibrake system that had been incorrectly installed by their Fife store, and to get the Fife store to reimburse them for it. We were finding out the same thing regarding our replacement table. Trying to get Camping World and or Winnebago to send the table further down the road to a future destination was like pulling teeth. I have one email after another trying to get them to see it from our perspective, and I ended up having to call Winnebago customer service to get them involved. Finally, Winnebago agreed to ship the new table to Camping World's Spokane Valley store. So that's the direction that we would head once we left Boise. Boise and the surrounding area were a joy for us to visit. We went into an Albertsons grocery store, and not just any Albertsons, but the very first one ever opened. As we walked into the store, a sign on the wall read, "Original site of Joe Albertsons' first supermarket, established 1939. The city is so green with an abundance of parks and paths, and one of the major parks was named Catherine Albertson Park. We spent several hours taking in the scenery and wildlife and walking many of the pathways that weaved throughout the park. We spent a day in ZooBoise, a small, 10-acre, and old-feeling zoo with many of its inhabitants spending their lives in tiny cages or walled-in areas. All of it wasn't like that, but enough of it was that we took notice. We both hope that they will modernize the zoo in the future to a more wide-open design that so many other zoos have since gone to. We had a fun time visiting the state capitol building. The governor was out of town, so his secretary let us wander into his office and sit at his desk if I chose to, which I declined, but that was kind of cool. After spending several hours going through the very impressive structure, we found a brew pub a few blocks away for lunch, and then we drove up to the now vacant Boise Depot, which is where Amtrak used to have a station for the passenger trains. The depot sat high above the city, giving us a great vantage point for taking photos. The building and grounds were beautiful, with large man-made rock structures and plenty of ponds and vegetation. One day, we visited the incredible Idaho Botanical Garden. Sitting on 50 acres adjacent to the old Idaho State Penitentiary, the site used to be the prison's farm and nursery. There were several differently themed gardens within, but one of our favorites was the Lewis and Clark Native Plant Garden, with its paved walking trails and informational signs throughout. A wonderful day to spend in the summer. The next day we were off to the south of town to visit the World Center for Birds of Prey. They take care of birds that have been injured and would otherwise die as they were unable to hunt. The highlight was a large cage holding a California condor, the largest flying bird in North America and the most endangered bird in North America. The center had a major breeding program for those condors. In addition to their live birds, they also have rooms full of taxidermy specimens. Before long, it was July 24th and time to depart to our next destination, a 265-mile trip north to the Hells Canyon Resort in Clarkston, Washington. We could have taken I-84 northwest to Ontario, Oregon, where we would then head north on US 95, but we elected to take the more direct State Route 55 north to McCall, Idaho, and then to New Meadows, where it merged into US 95. State Route 55 was a very scenic drive, paralleling Cottonwood Creek for several miles. There was road construction on this stretch, along with some mountainous terrain. The first test to see how G2 handled the hills. I was thankful that our Invisibrake system was working again, but G2 had many of the same issues that Gypsy had when descending a steep hill. The engine speed would pick up quickly, and if you didn't want to ride the brakes, which is a no-no, then one was stuck using the lower gears to creep down the grade. All the hills that we encountered really made me think about a diesel pusher motorhome and how the higher torque allowed you to go up hills with ease, while compression braking allowed you to descend hills with minimal brake usage. Oh well, so much for wishful thinking. We just bought a new motorhome and we'd have to learn and adjust to her shortcomings. We pulled into our beautiful RV resort in the late afternoon. Simply a stunning, modern, and clean RV resort with a beautiful office and recreation building, and that included an indoor swimming pool, extremely clean and modern bathrooms and showers, and a tile-in-the-floor chessboard with 3-foot-tall chess pieces. Paving throughout the park consisted of concrete for the campsite pads and asphalt for everything else, with manicured and irrigated islands of grass and trees between the campsites. The campground was also a marina, and it was where the Snake Dancer excursions boats were based that took customers up and through the whitewater of the Snake River. This would be our home for the next 8 days. One new feature that we grew to appreciate on G2 was her power awning. With the sun beating down with temps around 100 degrees, it was nice to be able to extend the awning to provide some shade over the entrance door and the area where the picnic table was located. Gypsy also had an awning, but we had to manually extend it and retract it with several steps and a special tool in the mix. With G2's power awning, a toggle switch inside the coach extended it out just as far as we wanted it to go. We received an important phone call from our realtor that afternoon. Our house sale had closed. We had lived in that house for close to 16 and a half years, and for me, that was the longest stay in any residence over the course of my life. The closing was a huge sigh of relief for us, no longer having to make any more mortgage, property tax, insurance, or utility payments, nor having to worry about someone breaking into our vacant house. The sale also closed out an interest-only HELOC loan that we had taken out against our home to help finance improvements to our Coeur d'Alene business park. So we ended up paying close to $25,000 out of pocket. Still, it was a special day, and we celebrated by going out to dinner in nearby Lewiston, Idaho, and enjoying a special dessert. This area was heavily influenced by the Lewis and Clark expedition, with no greater tribute than the names of the two Siamese-like cities, Lewiston and Clarkston, and that's in Idaho and Washington respectively, separated by the Snake River. In our RV park, the sidewalk going past the marina had been engraved and painted with key events of the expedition. We visited the nearby Hell's Gate State Park, which featured the Lewis and Clark Discovery Center. It contained a wealth of information about the expedition, including a gigantic topographical map in the lobby that detailed the explorer's journey. We spent another day in downtown Lewiston, simply walking the streets and seeing the sights. Like other small towns we have seen, Lewiston's downtown area was not as vibrant as it once was, with many spaces boarded up or hosting marginal appearing businesses. We traveled out to Lewiston's regional airport, a place where my older brother Steve, back in his days as a commercial pilot, had flown in and out of countless times. Like downtown Lewiston, Amy and I were about the only ones there. Our motorhome paperwork needed a bit of tending to. When we purchased G2, we closed out the loan for Gypsy and took out a new loan for G2 through a different bank. Happily, a check arrived in the mail from the first lender in the form of an interest reimbursement to the tune of $464. With G2, our concerns now centered on her temporary license sticker that we had taped to the back window. That sticker was only good for a month or so, and we needed to get a permanent license plate from the state of Washington. We spent most of a day in a licensing agency in Clarkston waiting for our turn with a one-lady employee helping numerous customers. She finally found the form that we needed, and upon looking over the sale, it turned out that the Meridian, Idaho Camping World didn't put in the proper amount of sales taxes that had to be sent to Washington State. If we wanted permanent license plates, we would first need to shell out over $304.